Before their reunion, both Connie and Tom had gone through major life changes. Connie spent years focused on her career, never quite finding a deep connection in her relationships. Tom had lost his wife, Veronica, and struggled with the grief. These experiences led both to reevaluate their futures, thinking it might be too late for a new chapter. Their families had been close for years. Connie had admired Tom from afar, and after her sister's end of life, she spent more time with him. The emotional support they shared grew into a deeper bond. They hadn't expected this, but both felt the connection was unique and comforting. As they drove to Tom's house, their thoughts lingered on the changes in their relationship. Going back to how things were wasn't an option, and neither wanted to. While Connie was eager to move forward, Tom was more hesitant, though just as committed. The only question left was when they would tell others about their new relationship. "Come on in," Tom said as they pulled into his driveway. "The boys aren't home, so we can relax and talk. I'm Detective Sergeant Pavel Janicek. This is Detective Filippone. We're here to discuss your wife's disappearance on April 23rd. Tom replied, "I thought I covered everything with the Coast Guard. There have been a few new developments since then." "Like what?" Tom asked. "How would you describe your relationship with your wife, Mr. Lynch?" "It was great. We've been married 18 years. No problems, at least until the accident. And there were no marital issues." "No," Tom said firmly. "What's going on here? Do you know a man named Brandon Collingsworth?" Janicek asked. "Number should I? He's a senior accountant at your wife's company. Are you sure you don't know him?" "I'm sure. I didn't know her work colleagues." She reported to Marcel Lapierre, not Collingsworth. This was a business-only environment. "What's this about?" Janicek leaned back, still watching Tom. "We got an anonymous tip suggesting your wife and Mr. Collingsworth were having an affair. You had no idea?" Tom was visibly shocked. "I don't believe it. What does this have to do with her disappearance?" Janicek continued. "We've interviewed people at her office. Several suspected something between Collingsworth and your wife. They normally wouldn't have interacted, but the rumors persisted." Tom accused them of relying on gossip, but Janicek pressed on. "We also interviewed Mr. Collingsworth, and after some pressure he admitted they were involved." Tom looked stunned. "I had no idea. Why would she do this?" Janicek stayed silent while Tom processed the information. Finally Tom asked, "Why are the RCMP involved?" "There's a chance this could be a suspicious end of life," Filippone said. "Maybe you found out about the affair and acted in a moment of rage." "That's ridiculous," Tom replied angrily. "I didn't know about the affair and I'm not a butcher." "That's what many husbands say," Filippone remarked. "Sometimes anger takes over and bad things happen." "So, am I a suspect?" Tom asked, now defensive. "Not at this time," Janicek answered calmly. "We just want to go over the facts again for our own records, separate from the Coast Guard report." Tom Lynch sat in silence, clearly uncomfortable while the detectives watched him. "Okay, one more time," he said. "But from now on, if you want to talk, my lawyer will be here." "Got it." "That's fine," Filippone replied. Tom began, "We were in the Southern Straits race like we had been for the past 6 years. The weather was supposed to be rough, but nothing like what it turned into. My boat's got radar, GPS, and Veronica and I had plenty of experience, so I wasn't worried. We took 4-hour shifts at the helm. I was on from midnight to 4 a.m. while Veronica slept. I had coffee and energy bars to stay awake. The storm worsened after I took over, and radar showed it was going to be rougher than expected. I put on my survival suit and left Veronica's at the bottom of the companionway in case she came on deck. Everything was fine until just before 2 a.m. I started feeling sick cramps like food poisoning. It got worse, so I hit the alarm to wake Veronica. She came up suited and took over. I went below to the head and it took a while because I had diarrhea. I heard a noise on deck, figured something was loose, but knew Veronica wouldn't leave the helm, so I cleaned up and got ready to go back. When I returned, she was gone. I turned on the deck light and called for her, but nothing. How long were you gone? Janosek asked. Maybe 15 or 20 minutes, no more. Continue, the detective said. The boat was on self-steering, which we usually avoid in bad weather. The noise I heard was from the inflatable. An oar had come loose. I checked below, thinking she might be in another cabin or head, but she wasn't there. It took me a few minutes to realize she'd gone overboard. I dropped the sails, started the engine, and circled back using the GPS. I called her name and turned on the deck light, but deep down I knew it was hopeless. I made a distressed call to the Coast Guard, and they have the recording. I kept searching, but the waves were too rough. The Coast Guard arrived around 4 a.m., but I knew by then she was gone. Even with her survival gear, the water was too cold. I lost her. Her body's never been found? Philippone asked, already knowing the answer. Tom shook his head sadly. Anything else that might help clear this up? Janosek asked. I'm as confused as you are about the affair. I don't think it's connected to her disappearance. As I said, Philippone added, an angry husband might seek revenge. If she was planning to leave you, maybe you knew a divorce would cost you half of everything, including your business. How many times do I have to say it? I didn't know about the affair. It was an accident, a horrible accident. The detective sat quietly, watching Tom. Was he telling the truth? They had no proof otherwise, but if he knew about the affair, was it just a coincidence that she vanished without a trace? Coincidences were hard to believe in their line of work. That's all for now, Mr. Lynch. Let us know if you plan to leave town. This case isn't closed, Philippone said. Tom stood clearly angry. Next time I'll have my lawyer. I won't be your scapegoat while you try to make 2 and 2 equal 5. He left the room, unable to slam the door, thanks to the pneumatic closer. What do you think? Janosek asked his partner. Hard to say. It all depends on whether he knew about the affair. Yeah, Janosek nodded. That's the key. 3 months had passed since Tom lost Veronica, and his life had been filled with turmoil. First came the grief, then a month ago, the revelation of her affair with a co-worker named Collingsworth. Tom understood why the police were suspicious. He would have had a motive if he had known about the affair. It shifted his focus from mourning to dealing with the fallout. Veronica's parents were devastated, especially her mother, who seemed to blame Tom and had become distant. The only real support Tom received was from Veronica's younger sister, Connie. Connie, who once had a crush on Tom as a teenager, had grown into a successful independent woman running her own interior design business. Tom's mother was also upset by Veronica's end of life, but she accepted it as a tragic accident. Having already lost Tom's father, who had been liquidated during a business trip to China, she poured her energy into supporting Tom and her grandsons, Verna and Tony. The twins were handling their mother's end of life better than Tom. Vern was focused on getting an academic scholarship, while Tony planned to join the family business. Tom hadn't told them about their mother's affair or the police questioning. After a small memorial service, a plaque was placed in a park near Veronica's parents' home. Her father appreciated the gesture, but her mother remained cold toward Tom, showing affection only for her grandsons. Connie often visited Tom on weekends, encouraging him to get back out on the water, but he hadn't touched the linchpin lady since the accident. When he suggested selling the boat, both Connie and the boys opposed the idea, so it stayed docked and used. Tom found comfort in his work at Linchpin Plastics, which specialized in PET containers for industries like pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. His father had steered the company away from the crowded beverage market, and Tom had continued his father's strategy, keeping the business thriving. He worked closely with his old college friend Brian Edgar, who was now his sales manager. They were both in sync about the company's direction, and were good friends outside of work. Although Tom hadn't returned to his sailboat, he still found refuge at the yacht club, especially in the dining room and bar. His father had once been Commodore, and Tom had been expected to follow, but Veronica's end of life had delayed that. Still, he enjoyed being at the club and often brought his sons for dinner. One Friday evening in July, after a long week at work, Tom stopped by the club. He had invited his sons, but Tony had other plans, so only Verna showed up and brought Connie with him. "Hi, Dad." Hope you don't mind that Aunt Connie joined us since Tony couldn't make it, Verna said. Tom, can you tell your son not to call me Aunt Connie? It's making me feel old, she said. Verna, respect your aunt's wishes, Tom replied. So I should just call her Connie, Verna asked. Sure, or babe or hot stuff, Tom joked, prompting laughter from the group. It was the first time in months that Tom could remember laughing. Don't you dare, Verna, Connie said with a playful poke. You may call me Connie or Miss Fairley, depending on the occasion. Verna shrugged and grinned at his father, and they all shared a light moment, something that had been rare in the past 3 months. Friday night at the dining room was seafood night, and each of them ordered a different dish. The food was excellent as usual. The mood stayed light until the dessert tray came around. Connie and Tom passed, but Verna chose a huge New York cheesecake. Their waiter quickly brought 3 forks, anticipating they'd share. I need to stop eating here, Tom joked, leaning back. I'm going to hit 300 pounds soon. Nonsense, Connie replied. You still look great, just like when you dated my sister. Ooh, someone's got the hots for Dad, Vern teased. Careful, Tom warned. This is family, not one of your teenage chats. Relax, Tom, Connie said. Vern didn't mean any damage, right, Vern? Yeah, sorry, Dad, Vern said, looking concerned. I'm not upset, Tom said quietly, glancing at Connie. But some topics aren't for public or private talk. Party pooper, Connie grinned. Don't lead my son astray. I'm trying to raise him to be a gentleman, Tom said with a smile. Good luck with that, Connie laughed and Verna joined in. As coffee was served, Verna asked, Dad, can you give Connie a ride home? I've got a date in half an hour. Sure, Tom replied. Have a good time. After Verna left, Connie turned to Tom. You've raised 2 great boys, Tom. You must be proud. I am, but Veronica deserves a lot of the credit. She guided them. They'll be out of the house soon. What will you do then, Connie asked. I don't know, maybe downsize or live on the lady. You haven't been on the boat since the accident, right? No, I just can't get excited about it. The boys would love to go out with you and so would I. I love that boat as much as you do. I don't want to go alone, Connie. I'm not ready. You don't have to. I can crew with you. I know the boat well. Maybe I should take her out. She's been sitting there for months. There's the Tom I know, Connie smiled. Why not check her out tonight? If all's good, we could make a weekend of it. Tom hesitated, wondering how the conversation had moved so fast. Can I trust you to behave? He grinned. Of course, she smiled. Vern was right. I've had a thing for you since I was 14. I knew that, but I never took advantage. And after that I was married. I took those vows seriously. I can tell, Connie said quietly, looking at her cup. Tom broke the silence. Let's go check the boat. Yes, let's. They walked to the dock, and Tom opened the gate for Connie. As she passed, she brushed against him, not by accident. Tom watched her head toward the linchpin lady. Connie had never married, saying she hadn't found the right man. Veronica used to tease that she wasn't looking hard enough. Connie had built a successful interior design business, starting on her own at 27, and by 33, she was well established and doing well. Veronica had been slim, tall, and always put together, but not overly glamorous. She was an accountant, but had stayed home when the twins were born. Once they turned 13, she went back to her old job at Samples and Reed and seemed content. She didn't socialize much at work, which suited her introverted nature. Tom always made sure to introduce new people carefully before they became friends. Connie was the opposite of her sister Veronica in many ways, shorter but curvy, with a lively personality. Tom had often found her very attractive, occasionally wishing Veronica had her spark. Despite these thoughts, he was content in his marriage. Now at 40, he felt he was too young to give up on life, and if he sought a new partner, he would be selective. Tom was a handsome man, 6 feet tall with dark brown hair, a medium build and a tan from years of sailing. He worked out regularly, and his natural smile and dark brown eyes made him stand out. Many women envied Veronica for having such a successful, personable husband. Tom quickly checked over the lady and found everything in order. The maintenance team had emptied the freshwater tanks, and the fuel was nearly full. The batteries and systems all worked, and he left instructions to refill the water. The next morning he'd just need to pick up food and drinks. That night, as Tom lay in bed, he thought about Connie. It felt odd to think about dating his late wife's sister, even though it wasn't wrong. She had certainly grown up since her awkward teenage years. Still, the idea didn't bother him. Connie had often joined the family on weekend sailing trips, and the thought of taking her out on the lady felt natural. He left a note for Vernie and Tony, inviting them to join him on the boat for the weekend, then packed a bag. Despite his earlier reluctance, he was looking forward to being back on the water. Tom was startled awake the next morning by the doorbell at 7 a.m. Dragging himself out of bed, he pulled on jeans and opened the door to find Connie, ready for sailing and beaming. "What are you doing here this early?" he groaned. "The sun's up, let's go," she chirped. "Come in, I need to get ready, make some coffee." "Sure, and don't forget your overnight bag." "I've got it packed," Tom replied. 15 minutes later, Tom was showered, dressed, and carrying his bag. The boys hadn't stirred, likely due to a late night. Connie held up Tom's note to the boys, smirking. "Looks like it's just you and me for the weekend." Tom smiled faintly. "We need groceries." "Nope, I took care of it last night," Connie said proudly. "Good, when's high tide?" "Just about now," she replied, ensuring they'd have an easy exit from the marina. Connie drove them to the yacht club, chatting along the way while Tom sipped his coffee. They loaded the supplies and bags onto the boat in the cool morning sun. Connie expertly untied the lines as Tom carefully navigated out of the marina with the bow thruster. The diesel engine hummed as they headed toward the open waters of Georgia Strait. There wasn't much wind, but they had no set destination. Tom kept the motor running, scanning for a breeze. "Where do you want to go?" Tom asked as they stood together in the cockpit. "Somewhere sunny, warm, and private," Connie replied, giving him a satisfied look. Tom grinned, fully aware of Connie's intentions. He had known about her attraction to him for years. When she was 14 and he was 21, it had been awkward. Later, as she grew into an attractive woman, he sometimes avoided being alone with her, but Veronica had laughed it off. Now, with both of them single, things felt different. After Veronica's end of life, Connie began checking in on him, taking care of the boys and handling household tasks, all while managing her own business. Tom didn't mind. Connie's positive energy was a welcome relief after everything that had happened. He often saved his memories for private moments, especially at night. Sleeping alone felt strange, especially after Veronica's scent had faded from the sheets. The two of them had rarely been apart, traveling together to trade shows in places like Chicago and Dusseldorf. His thoughts drifted back to the detectives. It was still hard to accept that Veronica had been unfaithful. But the evidence was clear. Others knew and talked. He had no choice but to accept it as fact. "A penny for your thoughts?" Connie asked, breaking his reverie. "Just reminiscing," Tom lied. "Tom, you need to stop grieving. Your sons and even my parents have accepted it. You have many years ahead that could be happy if you let them," she said gently. He nodded. "I suppose you're right. Is that what this weekend is about?" "Exactly, you're still young and what happened wasn't your fault. It's time to move forward, and you know I'm here to help." Tom smiled. "You've been a great support, Connie. I don't know if I've said it, but having you around has been a big help." She smiled back and gave him a hug. "Where are we headed?" she asked. "I thought Satuna, maybe anchor at Winter Cove." "Perfect," she said enthusiastically. "Great, take the helm and I'll get some coffee in Danish." As Tom made his way below deck, he noticed the wind was finally picking up. They could sail once they finished their snack. His father had bought the linchpin lady from a business associate who was desperate during a divorce, then refurbished it to modern standards. The boat had been the site of many family weekends, and it had proven its worth during the storm when Veronica was lost. Tom couldn't help but wonder if he could have done something differently to save her, but then there was the affair. The confusion and regret weighed on him. He returned to the cockpit with coffee in Danish, and they ate in comfortable silence, enjoying the view as they sailed west into Georgia Strait. They'd turn south toward the Gulf Islands later. The waters were calm, though they kept an eye on ferry traffic. After their snack, they raised the sails. Tom and Connie were a well-practiced team. The winches made raising the Genoa and mainsail easy. The Lady wasn't built for speed, but was a comfortable cruiser perfect for them. The wind was still light, but they made good progress under sail, gliding over the gentle chop. Sunglasses and sunscreen were necessary as they sailed under the bright sun. Connie handled the helm with confidence, as she had done many times before. She had often joined the family on sailing trips, and Tom had always appreciated her help, both on deck and in the galley. By late afternoon, they arrived at Winter Cove on Saturn Island. Their favorite anchoring spot was free. Tom carefully guided the Lady into position, while Connie handled the anchor, following his directions. The cove was sheltered from the wind, and they settled in comfortably for the evening. When Tom was satisfied with the anchor, he signaled Connie to cut the engine. The sudden quiet was always striking. No traffic or planes, and the jet skis were gone for the evening, leaving them in peaceful solitude. "What's for dinner, Connie?" Tom asked. "Pork and beans on a paper plate." She joked with a straight face. "You liar." Tom laughed. "What did you really bring?" "A variety of cold cuts, cheese, coleslaw, fresh rolls, and lemon tarts." "Sounds healthy," Tom grumbled. "What about wine? Do you still have that Spanish red Castillo something?" "Yup, wanna start with a Beaujolais I open?" "Sure, I'll handle dinner while you set up the table," Connie offered. They set up at the back of the cockpit, enjoying the last of the sunlight. Tom grabbed the Beaujolais from the cooler and opened the Spanish red to breathe. They clinked glasses and silent toast. The food exceeded Connie's modest description, and there was plenty left for the next day. "I'm glad you decided to do this, Tom," Connie said. "Go sailing?" "Yes, and invite me along." "Wasn't it your idea?" Tom teased. "Would you have gone without me?" she asked. After a pause, Tom admitted no, probably not. "Any regrets?" she asked. He smiled, none. They ate quietly, enjoying their wine and the peaceful surroundings. After a while, Connie spoke again. "Tom, do you know the 5 stages of grief?" Tom looked at her surprised. "Yeah, vaguely: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, right?" "Exactly. Where do you think you are?" "I haven't thought about it much. There's no denying Veronica's gone, and I was angry, blaming myself. Depression hit hard, but I think I'm working through it. The pain is still there, though." "So, are you nearing acceptance?" she asked. "It's more complicated than that. There are things I found out that change everything," Tom replied, his voice heavy with meaning. Connie's expression shifted from confusion to realization. "She cheated on you, didn't she?" she asked angrily. Tom was taken aback by how quickly she guessed. He nodded but didn't say anything. "That selfish, stupid woman," Connie fumed. "How did you find out?" "I don't want this getting out to the family. It would hurt too many people. She's gone, so what's the point?" "I agree. It would devastate my parents and your boys." Tom hesitated, then explained. "The RCMP called me in for an interview about the accident. At first it seemed routine, but then they asked about a senior manager at Veronica's office. I didn't know him, but they hinted at an affair. Eventually the guy admitted to it. It had been going on for months." Connie was stunned. "How could she do this to you?" Tom shook his head. "I had no idea. The police even wondered if I knew about it and did something to her." Connie sat silently, processing the information. After a long pause, she asked, "Is that why it's been so hard for you to move on?" Tom nodded. "Yes. Not only did I lose her, but I also can't understand why she betrayed me, the boys, all of us." Connie sighed. "My sister was always selfish. We never got along growing up. Maybe she resented me for being the younger, unexpected child who got a lot of attention. But when you came along, I could see her scheming. You were a catch, handsome, smart, and set to inherit your dad's business. She knew exactly what she was doing." Tom listened quietly as Connie spoke, a hint of dark humor in her voice as she reflected on their shared history with Veronica. Tom chuckled, knowing Connie wasn't revealing anything new about her feelings for him. "I was helpless," Connie said. "Too young and awkward back then, but you always treated me well. You were my Prince Charming, even though I knew I'd lose you to my sister. I cried myself to sleep, wishing I was older and prettier. Once I got older, she stopped giving me a hard time because she had you in the life she wanted. You were never ugly, Tom protested. You were just growing up. By the time you turned 16 you were beautiful, and you've only gotten more beautiful since. I'm surprised no one swept you off your feet. Connie gave him a serious look. You don't get it. I was waiting for you. Every guy I dated was compared to you and none of them measured up. Tom, surprised, leaned back and sighed. You waited 20 years for your sister to mess up? She nodded. Futile, I know. Veronica had you and everything she wanted. You gave her everything, new cars, vacations, a big house, and she took you for granted. I never knew, Tom admitted. I thought I was just giving her what she deserved for being a good wife and mother. There were no signs she was unhappy or cheating. She was selfish, Connie said. When she had everything, she still wanted more, like a lover. I knew she'd mess up someday. You really didn't think much of her, did you? Tom said sadly. Remember, part of it was jealousy because she had you, but mostly it's anger now, knowing how she betrayed you. And now she's gone, Tom said. Connie nodded. Yes, and I'm still here, not knowing what to do. Tom sighed. It's too soon for me to think about the future. I am attracted to you, but everything I believed about my marriage is falling apart, and it's messing with me. I might need therapy to sort this out. Therapy? Really? Connie asked, surprised. Maybe. I need to get my life back together for the boys, the business, and myself. Connie hugged him tightly. I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't mean to dump all this on you now. I had no idea what my sister had done. I'll give you space. I've waited this long. I can wait longer. Tom held her close, unsure of his feelings. Was it love or just confusion? He needed to figure it out before making any decisions. They finished the wine in silence, sitting apart but not distant. The stars appeared, and Tom found himself thinking about the satellites orbiting above, always watching from a distance. The quiet of the cove was interrupted only by the occasional jet from Vancouver. As the night settled in, they buttoned up the cockpit and went below. Tom slept in the forward stateroom, and Connie chose one of the aft guest rooms. The boat could sleep 7, though it had rarely been full in recent years, usually just Tom, Veronica, the boys, and sometimes Connie. Tom woke early on Sunday as the cabin filled with light. Knowing he wouldn't fall back asleep, he grabbed some clean clothes and headed to the forward head for a quick shower and shave. When he emerged, Connie was already in the galley, wearing a sheer dressing gown and making coffee. Morning, he greeted her with a smile. Hey, did you sleep well? Yeah, you? Okay, but we did talk about some heavy stuff last night, she admitted. I didn't mean to burden you with that. No, I'm glad you told me. It's something I needed to know. Tom noticed her translucent gown showing her figure clearly, and felt a familiar attraction. While he had seen her in bikinis before, things felt different now. With Veronica gone, he found his inhibitions slipping. He poured himself a bowl of cereal, knowing Connie wouldn't want a big breakfast. She soon disappeared into the shower while Tom ate, contemplating how much things had changed in his life. Grief had been replaced with a sense of freedom, especially after learning about Veronica's affair. For the first time he realized he was free to pursue other women like Connie. When Connie returned, dressed in snug shorts and a tank top, Tom jokingly asked, "Are you going to be warm enough in that? I'll lay her up if I need to." She did.